Every once in a while, a book comes out that doesn't just describe a problem. It feels like it defines a moment. Stop Struggling Alone is one of those books. It's really hitting a nerve with guys who feel like they're trying to figure things out in a pretty confusing world. So we're going to break down the biggest ideas from its first chapter and see why so many men are saying, yeah, this is the conversation we needed to have.
And the response from people reading it has been, well, incredible. People are calling it everything from a life changer to impossible to put down. This one review just calls it a powerful and much-needed read. And that really says it all. It's clear this isn't just another book on the shelf. For a lot of guys, it's becoming a kind of map for a path they felt totally lost on.
All right, so here's the roadmap for what we're covering from that first chapter. We'll kick things off with this central paradox facing guys today. Then, we'll get into the loneliness epidemic and the whole digital disconnect thing. After that, we'll tackle the tricky subject of modern masculinity and the hunt for purpose, before wrapping up with the book's actual path forward.
Okay, let's start with the big one, the core problem this whole book is built around. This really strange paradox of being the most technologically connected generation in all of human history, but at the same time, feeling more disconnected than ever. So the book kicks off with this story about a guy named Marcus. And if you look at his life on paper, the guy is connected. He's got almost 1,000 Instagram followers, over 1,000 LinkedIn connections. His dating apps are going off. But how does he actually feel? Like he's just shouting into a void. It's such a perfect way to show the giant gap between a high follower count and real, genuine human connection.
And this brings up a huge question, one I think pretty much everyone has asked themselves at some point. With these supercomputers in our pockets that can connect us to anyone, anywhere, why does finding a real, authentic connection feel harder than ever? It's this question that really sets the stage for everything else the book gets into.
So that feeling of being disconnected, it has a name, and the book dives right into it as the first major issue, the loneliness epidemic. And it makes it crystal clear, this isn't just about feeling bummed out. This is a full-blown, legitimate health crisis.
And the book grounds this whole crisis in a number that just stops you in your tracks. Recent data shows that 1 in 4 young men say they feel lonely a lot on a daily basis. Just think about that for a second. 1 out of every 4. The book's point is so important here. That's not a personal failure, that is a societal pattern.
Now look, loneliness obviously affects everybody, but the data shows that the numbers are way higher for young men compared to young women. And that gap, that's exactly why a book zeroing in on this specific experience is just so necessary right now.
And this is where the book really changes the game, right? It frames loneliness not just as an emotional issue, but as a physical one. And the impact is just staggering. It says it's comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. All of a sudden, the stakes feel a whole lot higher, don't they?
So what's going on? Why is this happening? Well, the book points to 5 big things all hitting at once. What it calls the friendship cliff. What happens after you leave school. Social media being a pretty poor substitute for the real thing. Huge cultural barriers around men being vulnerable. What it calls the time famine. We're just always busy. And finally, the fact that we all move around so much more, breaking up those community ties.
And of course, you just can't have this conversation without talking about the elephant in the room, technology. The book calls this the digital disconnect, this massive chasm between what our devices promised us and the reality we're all living in.
The promise was amazing, right? Instant connection, all the knowledge in the world at our fingertips. But for so many of us, the reality has been something way different. More loneliness, more anxiety, and just this constant state of distraction. The book argues that we've been handed these incredibly powerful tools without any instructions, and it's time we started being more intentional about how we use them.
And here's a number that is just wild. The average American checks their phone 144 times a day. That's about once every 10 minutes that we're awake. It's really no wonder that deep focus and just being present, the 2 things you absolutely need for real connection, feel almost impossible to achieve.
Okay, so layered on top of all of that, we've got another huge challenge, just trying to navigate what it means to be a man today. The book steps into this really complex topic, not to give one right answer, but to just lay out the confusing crossroads that so many men find themselves standing at.
It points out all these conflicting messages men are getting. You've got the old school traditional model. You've got the critique of that. Then you have a reaction against the critique. You've got this idea of a new positive masculinity and even a post-gender view. Being a man today means you're trying to make sense of all of these at the same time. It's a lot.
So, where does that leave us? Well, the book suggests a way forward with this idea it calls integrated masculinity. And it's not about throwing out everything from the past.
It's about expanding the definition, taking those timeless strengths like courage and resilience and combining them with modern essentials like emotional intelligence and respect. It's about building a version of masculinity that's just more complete and honestly more effective in the world we live in now. All these things, the loneliness, the confusion, they all feed into this final big problem the chapter talks about, what the book calls the purpose vacuum. It's that nagging feeling in the back of your head, that what is this all for feeling, that I think so many of us know.
See, for our parents' or grandparents' generations, a sense of purpose kind of came pre-installed. It came from a stable career for life, a clear role in the community, or shared cultural beliefs. The book argues that a lot of those structures have eroded, leaving a lot of guys feeling kind of adrift, without a clear direction or a sense of what they're supposed to be building. And the book asks you to just stop and think for a second with questions like this one. It's such a simple but powerful prompt. Is what you do every single day actually lined up with what you say is important to you? For a lot of people, really answering that question is a huge wake-up call.
And this all leads to the final part of the chapter. And this is where we shift from just talking about all the problems to actually, doing something about them. It's all about moving from understanding to action.
This quote from the book just gets right to the heart of the solution. We're always told that we have to find our purpose before we can act. The book completely flips that idea on its head. It says purpose isn't something you find like a lost set of keys. It's something you build, one small intentional action at a time.
And this right here is the key takeaway. Realizing that the loneliness, the digital distraction, the confusion, that these are collective challenges, not your own personal failings, well, that's incredibly empowering. It's the very first step to taking back control and consciously building the life that you actually want.
So I'll leave you with this final thought. The title itself is a command. Stop struggling alone. Maybe the most powerful idea in this whole chapter is that all these things, connection, purpose, confidence, aren't things you're just born with or without. What if they're skills? Skills you can actually learn, practice, and get better at together. The book makes a powerful case that guys owe it to themselves to learn these skills and to join this conversation. It's an idea whose time has absolutely come.